Hi, Governor Murphy. It's so great to connect with you, and welcome to the Voices for Vote 16 podcast. For our listeners, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy has been a proponent of Vote 16 in his state. He's been governor since 2018 and is the first Democrat to hold the second term in 44 years. Prior to his current position, Governor Murphy served as the U.S. ambassador to Germany and had a long career at Goldman Sachs. He's originally from Massachusetts and graduated from Needham High School, Harvard University, and the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Governor Murphy, we are honored to have you here, and we will give you some time after to expand on our introduction. Now, for us, the hosts, my name is Anya, and I'm joined here by Karush, and we are high school juniors in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and are pretty passionate about youth civic and political participation. We advocate for Vote 16, which, as you know, is a movement focused on lowering the voting age at the municipal or local level. And I serve on the Youth Advisory Board of Generation Citizen, leading Massachusetts Vote 16 Coalition, and conduct research on this topic with Tufts Circle. I also co-lead a youth civics club at my school, and for some context, a year and a half ago, I launched this as a podcast series focused on highlighting stakeholders' perspectives on Vote 16 to raise awareness and inform advocacy. I brought this as a citizens petition to the Wellesley 2024 annual town meeting, where it received approximately 40% support and some lively discussion. I'm joined here by Karush, who is partnering with me to take this movement forward in Wellesley, and I'll pass it to him to introduce himself.
Well, as you heard from Anya, my name is Karush. I'm a junior at Wellesley High School, and I'm also a town meeting member from Precinct E in Wellesley's Precinct E, serving in my third year coming up. I have always had a passion, like Anya said, for civic engagement, youth participation in politics. It's just been something that's really always interested me. Uh, I was happy to vote for the Vote 16 citizens petition last time in annual town meeting, and when Anya came in August and asked me to join the movement as a leader, co-leader of the program, I was super excited to accept for the opportunity. I'm happy that I really hope that we're gonna be able to move this forward this year, and I'm excited to vote for it again come the 2025 special town meeting and get and be able to pass the Vote 16 movement in Wellesley.
Thank you, Karush. So, to kick it off, Governor Murphy, can you expand on my introduction a little bit? Maybe tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and your involvement with the Vote 16 movement in New Jersey?
I'd be happy to. First of all, I'm really honored to be on. You two are doing great work. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Bay State. I still root for the sports teams up there, which gets me no votes in New Jersey, trust me. Uh, and a couple of fun facts. Needham and Wellesley is the oldest football rivalry in the United States. And another cool fun fact is former Governor Charlie Baker and I were classmates both at Needham High School and Harvard College. So in addition to all the other good reasons to connect, those are some fun dimensions as well. Not much more on my situation, other than to say that the one other sort of chapter in my life that is relevant for this discussion is that I was the national finance chair for the Democratic National Committee when Howard Dean was the chair, and honored to have funded his 50-state strategy, which Democrats desperately need to get back to. Also raised a lot of the money that took Congress back and got Barack Obama elected president, all of which I'm incredibly proud of. And as sort of a full-time volunteer slash professional matter, that was my really, other than growing up in a middle class and a good day, Boston suburb, Kennedy Democratic family, which instilled a lot of the values in me. At the DNC was really my first, if you will, professional involvement in the Democratic Party. The other reason that's relevant is the treasurer, the long-standing treasurer, alongside my side, and he lasted many years after, and he was there many years before, is a dear friend named Andy Tobias. And Andy has been a long-standing, passionate advocate of allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. So this first got into my bloodstream, if you will, now 18, 19 years ago. And you got the rest of my biography on you exactly right. I've been governor. I'm now just in my early days of my eighth year. And about a year or two ago, the Vote 16 NJ chapter, Yenjay and Anjali, who I had at my State of the State address 2 times ago, so a year ago last month, we started to get really seriously back and forth with them. And it makes allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote, period, to my way of thinking, and I think to many other allies, it just makes complete sense. The community that's really leading the charge in New Jersey is Newark. They're actually doing this. They have school board elections in April, and they will allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in that election. It's a little bit complicated with our systems right now, but this will ultimately become part of our regular voting process. I am supporting legislation that would allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in school board elections, not just in Newark, but around the entire state. We have chosen to walk before we run and have focused in on school board elections because we think there's a fair amount of skepticism out there. I don't have to tell you that. You both kind of alluded to that. So my theory is one way to convince people and win them over is to make, I think, the very compelling argument. Hey, folks, these school board elections are not abstract for a 16 and 17-year-old. They're in school. This is a direct impact on them in terms of who gets elected to that school board. So that's where we have chosen to start. That's what Newark is actually doing. That's what the legislation would do for all of New Jersey. Again, that's a little bit of an uphill fight. The skepticism is there, as I mentioned. You know, what does a 16 or 17-year-old know? Dot, 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 dot. Well, my argument is if they're in school and they're voting for a school board election, they know a lot. And then secondly, I think or I should say lastly, once we climb that mountain, I want to continue to push for universal voting rights for 16 and 17-year-olds. But we've chosen to walk before we run because we think we have the highest shot of success. How's that?
That's great. Thank you so much. My next question, and this you've touched on it, which is perfect. So I was a panelist at the Vote 16 Youth Summit in New Jersey, hosted by the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice last fall, which I
We
know
need
you
you
spoke
back.
at.
I
And
spoke at that.
yeah, I know it. I saw it and it was great. And so and so as you saw, there was a lot of support and energy for Vote 16 and civic engagement generally in that room.
You
So I was
bet.
wondering if could you touch on more in detail, I guess, like what it took for the state to get there? What was the process and arguments you heard for and against the movement? Just ultimately, how did Vote 16 get over the line in Newark?
Well, it got in Newark. I'll say specifically, Mayor Raz J. Baraka, who's an outstanding mayor, willed it to happen with his colleagues and allies, and it has a great local chapter of
Mhm.
Vote 16, and that made a big difference as well. So what you're doing will be, assuming you get there in Massachusetts and we get there in New Jersey, what you all are doing, the advocates who are in school, who are fighting that fight, are a big reason Newark has succeeded and God willing will succeed in both the Commonwealth and in New Jersey. I think the argument that makes, so I've made one argument that's specific to school board elections,
Mhm.
which has a lot of logic and is compelling, and that is they're in school. These elections impact them directly. I'm not in school anymore. I've got kids, but they're not even in school anymore. But this is, you're at the point of attack. The sort of higher minded argument, the one that I think is equally, if not more compelling and far more profound, is that voting is a habit, and young people tend to have bad voting habits. The irony is that senior citizens like myself vote at a very high clip, and yet the elections and the consequences of those elections have far more impact on people your age than on my age. Just by biological clock, you've got a lot more time on the clock than I do. And so there's a perversion there that the voter that has the least amount at stake is the higher propensity voter. So back to the habit point, voting, I think, is a habit. You're either in that habit or you're not. And the research is overwhelming, and this is where I give my buddy Andy Tobias a lot of credit because he's a best-selling author, and he is a wordsmith unlike anyone else I've ever met. And he makes this argument with great evidence and with great passion that you become a much more reliable lifelong voter. Um, and I reject completely these arguments about maturity or lack of maturity.
Mhm.
You all are plenty smart, plenty mature, plenty experienced. You know what's at stake. Look at what's happening in Washington the past not even 3 weeks. I just got back from there a couple of hours ago, and it's not the country I know right now. So we need more people in the game with that habit and ultimately as lifelong voters. I think that's the sort of that's the to me the more high-minded and equally compelling reason to get this done.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we both agree, and we've definitely heard those arguments about lack of maturity and all of that. I This is my last question before I pass it off to Karush. And so next, coming out of an election cycle, where, in your view, are we today in voting rights conversations and youth political participation?
Not where we need to be.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you look at the lack of participation. I'm going to be partisan for a minute. Actually, I won't be partisan. I'll just be analytical, then I'll get partisan.
Hmm.
Donald Trump got somewhat more votes in 2024 than he got in 2020, but not a whole lot more.
Hmm.
Kamala Harris got millions fewer votes than Joe Biden did in 2020.
Hmm.
And that's just a very depressing result. So participation is a general matter. Not, I'm going to leave aside the specifics of 16 and 17-year-olds, is just not where it needs to be. Period, full stop. And I worry, given the past number of weeks that we've already seen from this new administration in Washington, uh, we need to be in the fight. And I just hope that enough folks are going to be in the fight. And it's another reason why I love a youth element here, even accepting the fact that there were both Democrats and Republicans who were 16 and 17-year-old, right? So that they're not all going to vote the way that I would vote or that you guys would vote, but voting, period, and getting more people to vote, I would say borders on a national crisis. Some countries, Australia is a good example, have mandatory voting. I wouldn't be opposed to that as long as it included 16 and 17-year-olds. But the participation level is not where it needs to be. The news sources that folks are relying on is not, for the most part, what it needs to be. Money continues to play too much of a role. Citizens United continues to be, I think, a big black mark on the whole campaign finance landscape. So it's not where we need to be. In this step of 16 and 17-year-olds would be one, I think, of many steps that we need to take. We've done a lot in New Jersey. We have early in-person voting now for the past several years. That's been really helpful. We have same-day registration, which has been helpful. Um, we have we've given the right to folks on parole or probation the right to vote again. That's 80,000 people in our state. There's more that we want to do, but those are all steps that have opened democracy up, which I think is a good thing on any day of the week, regardless of what party you're in, regardless of how you vote. The more open democracy is, the better we will be and stronger we'll be as a country.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I'll pass it to Karush now.
Hey,
Yeah.
Karush.
How's it going? So I have some questions on the future and how we can apply any lessons learned to our advocacy in Massachusetts. So, what is your outlook on the Vote 16 movement and youth political participation in your state and our country in the future? I know you said right now that's not where it needs to be, but how do you think we can move forward, and where do you see us going when we're moving forward?
Well, it's not the only magic wand I would wave at democracy for sure, but it is an important one. And again, the more people we get to vote, I'm going to be blind to which side of the aisle they're on or how they vote. The more people that vote, the better. And this is to me, a no-brainer way to further open up democracy. As I mentioned, we've done some things in New Jersey that have worked well. I said same day. I meant automatic voter registration. I'd like to see same day, which we don't have yet. And so we have early in person. We're very good at vote by mail. Uh, we've gotten new fancy machines over the years that work really well and are secure. Um, but you've got news sources that are not primary researched, a whole lot on the internet. You've got foreign interference, which is pervasive. You've got money playing too big a role. As I mentioned, Citizen United, if you gave me one magic wand, I would roll that back. The US Supreme Court approved that, I think, in 2010. That's a bad, in my opinion, a big mistake. So those are some of the things I would do, but this would be part of it. So if you think of this as a package to increase participation, awareness, open up democracy, ultimately get more people to vote, getting 16 and 17-year-olds to vote would be certainly a key part of that package.
Yeah, we very much agree on that end. And then I'll move on to the next one, which is so in Massachusetts, we require statewide legislation to pass this as a local level. So how it would work is it would be a home rule petition, essentially. If it were to pass in Wellesley, the home rule petition would go to the state legislature. And it has been an impediment to progress. We've seen a lot of people, the reason that they're saying that we're not going to vote in the local level is because, oh, it's just going to go sit in the state house for a few years and nothing's going to happen. So why are we wasting our time on it now? Which we very much disagree. We've spoken with the assistant majority leader, our representative. We're speaking with more representatives in the state house, and they see a path forward. So, what's your advice to take the Vote 16 forward movement forward in our state and overall? And do you have any thoughts on where we go from here?
Yeah, so in New Jersey, we're a little bit different. You can do it at the local level. And I mentioned earlier to Anya that Newark is the best example of that. My gut tells me there are a handful of other communities that are bubbling up. Um, but unlike it sounds in Massachusetts, if you have success in Wellesley, you then have to take that into the state house
Right.
and get legislation to validate that. We're a little bit different. You could do it. In fact, I think happily different. A community can approve it and go ahead and do it. I still want legislation though, but the reason I want legislation is not in your case to get the Wellesleys of the world over the goal line once they've made a local decision, but to mandate it in every community. So right now you can opt in at the local level, and Newark has, and I think more will, which is great. Um, I'd like to have legislation passed and signed by me that would make every community, we have 565 of them, by the way, every community then would have to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote, again, first step in school board elections. So I think what I would do, has the governor come out and taken a position on this?
No.
She does not. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's terrific, by the way. You're
Yeah.
incredibly fortunate to have
Yes, we are.
as strong a governor as Governor Healy.
Yeah.
I think that would, if you said what's the one piece of advice, I think getting the governor behind that is probably not just in Massachusetts, but certainly where you are, wherever this might be. Yeah, I know in our case, I use the bully pulpit. You know, I get up, I give a state of the state address. A lot of people are watching. The legislators are right in front of me. There's nothing like the chief executive being vocal and supportive. So I'm not sure where she is, and I don't. My job is not to interfere with the governance in other states. But that would be, if that were to be the case, I think that's probably a big game changer.
Perfect, thank you. And then we just have one more for you, which would be Anya and I were talking about. Would you be able to talk a little bit more about the I believe it's the new Voter Empowerment Act that you signed in 2024 and how it supports youth political participation?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically along the lines of what we're talking about.
Okay.
It is putting wind in the sails of all the initiatives that increase the probability of getting youth at the polls to vote. I'm not sure what our ranking was. I should know this in the presidential in 2024. We were number one in the country
Wow.
in terms of youth vote in 2020.
Oh,
Uh, and we're proud of that. By the way, did you mention Tufts University, Anya, early
I
on?
did. I did some research with them and I got a grant from Tufts Circle.
Yeah, so the Tisch School there,
Yeah.
which the former dean was a dear friend, Alan Solomon. They did they are sort of the cutting edge um, research and policy shop in the country as it relates to youth voting and youth turnout.
Yes, definitely.
Um, and by the way, that's another piece of advice I give you. I would get as close to them as you can.
Yeah.
It's in their genes. They get the importance of the youth vote, and they've done most of the really good research, and I suspect would be really good allies for you.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so that
Have we solved all the problems of the world?
um
Almost, almost.
almost.
We should talk about who's going to win next year's football game, Karush.
Let's hopefully us. We'll see. We lost a lot of kids this year to private school, but hopefully we'll make a comeback.
That's going to be your senior year, right?
It will, it will. So
Okay.
hopefully, I'm
Are you
looking
also
for.
a junior, Anya?
I am a junior.
I know
Yes.
you're at a different school, and I know that school well enough to know I don't think they field a football team unless something's changed.
No, not a football team,
Okay.
no.
Unless something's changed over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be very different, but no, we don't have a football team.
Listen,
No.
I'm going to jump, but before I do, I want to make sure you stay in the fight because
Yeah.
my gut tells me, particularly given the quirkiness of the requirement to approve it locally and then go get it blessed by the legislature, my guess is your progress won't be a straight line. I
Yeah.
know it hasn't been in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And New Jersey and Massachusetts are very similar states in so many respects.
Yeah.
And so I think our experience, while the legislation dimension's a little bit different, our experience, I think, is in many cases relevant to yours. But stay in the fight because when something's not a straight line and there's skepticism around it, sometimes you can get discouraged. And don't let that happen because you're on the right side of history. This is what should happen. I believe it's what will happen. Stay the course and know that you've got an ally down here in the great Garden State.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening today. And be sure to tune in to new episodes of the Voices for Vote 16 podcast.